Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about having the majority of your planets in the first quadrant in a natal chart. Now, the first quadrant in a chart consists of houses 1, 2, and 3. And when you have a majority of the planets in that particular quadrant, the emphasis is often on the self and the interests of that particular person. They generally will be, they may be a little bit more introspective. They may be a little bit limited in their own, perhaps their own perceptions, their viewpoints. It can be a little bit about self-aggrandizement. When you look at the first 3 houses, the first is on the outer demeanor, the personality, the appearance, so there will be emphasis on that. Second house is about our values, our possessions, things of a monetary nature. There will be emphasis on that as well. And then the third house is about our communications, the neighbors, the siblings, if applicable, if the person has them. So there's going to be, I guess you could say, the fact that siblings are in the third house, there could be some interest with that, which would be slightly outside of the person's own interest, but maybe not that much. Now, obviously, you could have, somebody has some planets in Aquarius, for example, that could, there can be some compensations, and then this influence would be modified to some degree. Libra is about relationships and partnerships, so if somebody were to have even perhaps some planets in that sign, or say if they had it maybe in the third quadrant, for example, or had planets in the 7th house, this would kind of balance things out a little bit, so to speak, and the person wouldn't be maybe so strongly engrossed in their own daily activities so much. But I mean, it's actually a tie with me. I have the majority of my planets in the first quadrant and the second quadrant, because I have 4 planets in the first quadrant, and then I have 4 planets in the second quadrant. So it's a little bit modified with me, but I can even admit I could be come across a little egocentric at times, and I do put a strong emphasis on my own day-to-day activities and the things that I need to do. I may need to be have the ability maybe to reach out a little bit more to others. But on the positive side, if somebody has the majority of their planets in that first quadrant, it shows that strong focus on that need to improve oneself, and as far as the appearance goes, their outlook, they may never be quite satisfied with what maybe their own philosophy is, but at the same time, they generally won't deviate from their own, I guess you could say, their own viewpoint. They may need to kind of reach out and try to maybe hear perhaps another person's point of view from time to time. So that is one thing that is associated with having a majority of planets in the first quadrant. Now, in the second house is about our possessions and in things of a monetary nature. So this person may also be strongly money conscious and value conscious, and this is the kind of person that might put a lot of emphasis on as far as their own resources go, and really is about doing things in terms of generating money, maybe without really necessarily maybe hearing maybe another person's, I guess you could say, their input on their take perhaps on things of a monetary nature are going to be basically what they believe it needs to be. And in contrast to somebody had, well, it's basically they want to generate their own money in their own way without the assistance from another. Now, if somebody were to have the majority of their planets in the third quadrant, which would consist of the 7th, 8th, and 9th houses, and especially if they had at least one planet in the 8th, now they could be just the opposite. This person may be somebody that might put an emphasis on others' resources and be able to help utilize their resources in terms of maybe increasing their own, I guess you could say, their financial picture, so to speak. But this person basically wants to be reliant or dependent on their, I guess you could say, on their own resources and their own financial acumen and ability to make money without necessarily asking for the assistance of others. Now, don't get me wrong, this person may go on the internet or quote-unquote consult a financial guru or something, but they're not going to be the type necessarily to ask somebody for the assistance as far as things of a monetary nature goes. Now, then having the third house, now there can be a very strong emphasis on the communication part of the nature of this person, and there may be lots of, I guess you could say, conversation with others. And third house is about short journeys as well. So this person may be very strongly connected with this part of life, taking their little travels or journeys, their interaction with their neighbors, and this is all, and especially if one planet at least is in the third house. Now, the first quadrant emphasis is really, it's just about really that person working toward their own, strongly emphasizing their own needs. It doesn't mean they're oblivious to others, other people's needs, because I believe, even if someone has a majority of planets in this quadrant and they had very few in any of the others, you know that most people are still going to be connected with others to some degree, but in this case there would just be a little bit more emphasis on the self and their own, I guess you could say, their own needs as opposed to others. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for having the majority of planets in the first quadrant in the natal chart. And stay tuned next time, where I'll be dissertating and talking about having the majority of planets in the second quadrant in the natal horoscope. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because a person astrologically is the sum of all their components in your natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.